It's been a big week in federal politics, and I don't reckon there's a lot of good things to show for it. Unless that is, you count the exposure of just how deceptive and incompetent the Prime Minister and the Minister for Indigenous Affairs have been on The Voice. I mean, the most basic questions left them floundering, and they seem trapped in their previous promises versus their current platitudes. But there was also a lot more going on, and here to have a chat about it is UAP Senator Ralph Babet. Senator, thanks for your time. A big week for you. You've introduced your first private senator's bill this week. Tell me, what's it about and why do you think it's necessary?
Well, first of all, thank you, Corey, for having me on your show. Now, Corey, this bill goes a very long way to fulfil the promises that the United Australia Party took to the 2022 federal election. Now, if passed, my bill will ensure that no future indemnities are granted by the Commonwealth in relation to the use of vaccines. That it will limit financial and legal risk, and it will aid in the restoration of trust in medicine. So what does that mean, Corey? What does it all mean? I'll give you an example. Now, if a manufacturer, Corey, makes a car and that car ends up being faulty, and people end up, let's say, having car accidents and suffering injuries, who should compensate the injured? I'll tell you who. It should be the manufacturer, not the Australian taxpayer, not the Commonwealth, not the government. Now, at the moment, as an example, if someone is injured by a COVID-19 vaccine, all the costs associated with that injury are passed on to the taxpayer. Now, the vaccine companies, what are they doing? They're collecting their profits, but they're not forking out a single dollar of injury compensation. Now, historically, indemnity has rarely been granted. However, it's already been granted in advance for smallpox, monkeypox, and influenza vaccine. Now, we cannot allow this trend to continue. Big Pharma is making all the profits, every single dollar, but they're accepting none of the risks. Now, a precedent has been set, and my bill seeks to draw a very clear line in the sand, Corey.
Well, good on you for doing it. I don't like your chances, frankly, but at the very least, hopefully there'll be a debate about these sorts of policies going forward. Hey, there was another Pauline Hanson. She tried to get an inquiry up into this experimental child gender reassignment treatments that are going down. It was voted down 38 votes to 25. I noted you were one of those who voted in support of the inquiry. Commend you for that. But were you as surprised as I was by some of those who actually voted no?
Corey, my friend, I'm not surprised at all. And I'm sure you weren't surprised either. Being a former senator, you know exactly how that place worked. Now, even the leader of the coalition in the Senate, Simon Birmingham, voted no to Senator Hanson's inquiry. All she wanted, Corey, was to look into the experimental gender reassignment treatments for children, puberty blockers, and surgeries. That's it. Now, over the past 8 years in Australia, we've seen a 1,000% increase in children being treated at gender clinics. Now, we clearly have an epidemic on our hands, and parents, what do they want? They just want answers. Now, the least the Senate could do is investigate the issue, seek the truth. It is, after all, our job as senators. Now, countries like the UK, Sweden, Finland, and many states in the USA have already banned the use of puberty blockers on children, and we won't even have an inquiry. This is a disservice to the children affected, and of course to the Australian people, Corey.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've covered this, that gender affirmative care in places like Sweden and Finland and the UK has basically been abandoned in favour of holistic care, which is treating the mental state of the child and letting them make a decision when they're an adult about whether they want to have the surgeries and stuff. It's crazy that we're going down this path without even a discussion. All right, there's also been some controversy this week, or more controversy, I should say. There's fresh calls for Australia to introduce the death penalty for pedophiles after a horrific case of a former Gold Coast childcare worker. The 45-year-old in this case was charged with 1,623 offences against 91 young girls over a 15-year period. National Senator Matt Canavan is one of those calling for tougher punishments, Senator. Do you actually agree with him?
I have to hold myself back here because I know we're on national TV. Look, I'm going to say this. I do not disagree with my Senate colleague on this one, Corey, not at all. Now, I was so enraged last week when I found out about this case that I myself called for pedophiles to be thrown into wood chippers on the floor of the Senate. That's in the Hansard right now. But I think there may be a better way to deal with these rock spiders, which is what they are, rock spiders. Now, I suggest that we put them into general population in prison for life. We don't protect them and we allow them to mix with the other prisoners, and then we let those other prisoners know exactly why they are in there in the first place. Now, people at home read between the lines. Now, a lifetime in prison, unprotected, is what they deserve. Now, these victims, they will have to deal with this abuse for their entire life, and so should the perpetrator. I think we can all agree, at least the decent people amongst us in society can all agree, that we need to do more to protect the innocence of children, Corey.
Yeah, I think so. And there were plenty of people cheering you on and plenty who saying that's too tough. Let's finish on this. Despite all governments promising no changes to super, they keep coming. And the latest proposal I read about this week is to force Australians to use their super savings to help fund the struggling aged care sector. Now, my position on this and my question to you is, how can anyone have confidence in saving for their future when it's become abundantly clear governments think the money actually belongs to them?
Gee, it's out of control, isn't it? Look, in my opinion, essentially what they want to do is they want to raid your super. That's it. Now, this proposal is saying that on average, for people who have wealth, these people are passing away with roughly around 90% of the wealth that they had when they first went into retirement. And some of that is obviously locked up in superannuation. Now, that wealth is then left to their loved ones. Perhaps their kids, make sense, right? As an inheritance. So what they'd like to see happen is a proportion of your superannuation be, in effect, in my opinion, stolen and used to prop up the aged care sector. Now, government, they should never touch an individual's superannuation. You work hard for it. You decide how you'll spend it. Give it to your kids. It's up to you. Now, the more the government, the more that they mess with super, the less trust that we all have in the system, and it's less likely that people will contribute to said system because they don't know what's going to happen to their money. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, They want to take away your inheritance and they want to do away with generational wealth. Now, the Klaus Schwab phrase comes to mind. They want you to own nothing and be happy. Mr. Albanese, hands off our super. That's what I say.
Here, I agree with you. I mean, why would anyone save aggressively for their retirement if they're not sure they're going to have control of it? Senator Ralph, I bet you've given us some very frank talk tonight and a bit of common sense in there as well. So thank you for joining me on Bernardi.